Hi there. Today I'm taking a look at a wine from the Rhone Valley. This is from Gigondas. It's from a producer called Maison Lavau, and this is their 2019 vintage of that wine. So the Lavau family traces its origins back originally to Saint Emilion, and I note there is a Lavau family still owned Chateau Martinet in Saint Emilion, so possibly there's some relationship there, although the name Lavau is actually spelled differently. But in 1870, Rene Lavau took his family to Tunisia, and there he established and ran a small orange orchard with some vines. Now Rene's son Jean took this business and turned it into the largest wine producing company in Tunisia, and the business stayed in the family. However, in 1962, Jean's son Jean Guy and his wife Anne-Marie decided upon Tunisia's independence to take their family back to France. And they moved back to the Rhone Valley, to Sablet, where Jean Guy's father Jean had already bought a few years previously a small wine cellar there. So in 1965, the business that became Maison Lavau was founded in the Rhone Valley. The family built their business and they built contacts. They grew slowly, and in 1995 they bought the largest wine producer in Vacluse at a place called Entrechaux. Now also in the mid-90s, in 1995 and 1997 respectively, their two sons, Frederic and Benoit, came and joined them in the business. So it was that in 2000, when the parents decided to retire, the two brothers, Frederic and Benoit, took over the business. Now they had big plans for this business, and they rebuilt the cellars. They rebranded. I think it's at this stage that they start marketing their wines as Lavau. I suspect prior to that they'd been much more merchants than necessarily selling under their own brand. However, as I say, the brothers changed all this in 2000. The business continued to grow, and in 2009 they bought the second largest wine producer in Vacluse. Subsequently, they've also bought a number of small estates in various appellations within the Rhone, such as Rasteau, for instance. But a significant change occurred in 2013 when they merged their business with that of Châteauneuf-du-Pape producer Chateau Mauquois. So they joined up and merged their business with that of the brothers Dicté and Charles Bonnet. And today, the company, run by these two sets of brothers, owns about 140 hectares of vineyards and has 3 wine cellars. And they're proud of their remaining independent and maintaining their family-owned status. Now this particular wine is a blend of 50% of Grenache with 40% of Syrah and 10% of Mourvedre, so very typical grape varieties for this region. And it's grown on poor calcareous marl soils, on north-facing terraced vineyards on quite steep hillsides at the foot of the Dontil de Montmirail. The fruit for this wine is hand-picked, it's all destemmed, and it goes into temperature-controlled vats. I would assume those are stainless steel, but that's not actually specified. Fermentation is started with a couple of rack and returns just to get as much air into the ferment as possible. And throughout fermentation, there's a twice daily pump over. So plenty of extraction trying to go on here to get plenty of flavour, colour and tannin out of these grapes. The period of vatting, including fermentation, will last for about 28 days, so about a month. After that, the wine will age for a year, but it's split, and 55% of that ages in vats. Again, I'm unsure as to whether those are stainless steel or oak, but either way, there will be no flavour influence coming from those. If it's oak, it's old oak. And the remaining 45% ages in barrel. But again, these are larger barrels. These aren't barriques. These are 450 litre barrels, so twice the size of a barrique, and these are second and third fill barrels, so there won't be new oak influence coming here. This is more a question of the wine getting a controlled oxidation with the small amount of air that enters through the staves of the barrel. And the idea of that is just to sort of polymerize the tannins, to fix the colour, and to allow the wine to stabilise. So let's have a look at it, shall we? First thing to say, lovely deep dark, almost sort of black ruby colour with there are purple hints, but it's reasonably ruby at the rim. The wine is medium to deep in terms of its intensity. I can see through it. It's got quite a nice depth of colour. Swelling it, the wine is labelled as being 15% alcohol, and you can certainly see generous tears rolling slowly down the glass there. This is quite a viscous wine, and I can even from here I can smell a rich aroma of ripe red fruit, but that really is layered with sort of slightly meaty touches and plenty of spice. Not oak-derived spices, more sort of high-toned peppery notes. So let's have a taste, shall we? It's certainly a full-bodied, mouth-filling wine with quite rich alcohol. At the front of the palate initially, you see a pepperiness over some quite rich, ripe, I suppose red plum fruit initially, but very soon that becomes much more sort of dams and bullace, much darker fruit. And you get through to a core of really rich, sweet licorice. There's an incredible intensity here. The wine's full-bodied. There is a structure. It's, I want to see grainy, but not grainy in the way that sort of grained oak would be. It's a sort of a more rounded graininess, if that makes any sense. And this licoriciness really does take over and give a smoothness to the mid-palate. There's a definite anise, fennel note there. There's a little bit of chocolatey roundness, as much texture as flavour, but just, you know, a little bit in that sort of sweet spectrum there. There's some quite juicy black fruit, you know, hints of juicy black cherry just before it becomes more sort of black olive, more savoury note as well. Any meatiness that was on the nose is actually being sort of subsumed by the weight of rich, ripe, dark fruit. It's intense dark plum as well as that concentrated licorice note there. The acidity seems balanced. You don't really notice it that much. The alcohol, there are some really warming notes coming through, but actually as the wine settles on the palate, the weight of the fruit balances that alcohol quite well. Like I say, the acidity is sufficient to keep the wine fresh, but this is not a wine of particularly high acid. The flavours are lasting really quite well. They're rounded and juicy, and this sort of dark, juicy fruit carries on to the end. I'm actually really quite impressed with this. I took a look at our Wine Searcher aggregated score for this wine, and for this vintage, that sits at 86, which is perhaps not the most impressive score that you might expect to see. And I'm surprised it's not higher. And 2 reviews made up that score. However, both of them date back a few years. And I can only think that the wine's fruit must have opened in the meantime, because I would think this is a wine that justifies a score in the high 80s, perhaps even up to 90. It's got richness, it has some reasonable balance, it's not getting too hot or too jammy or anything like that. It's got a fair structure, and there's actually more depth and intensity than I was expecting from the wine. In terms of aging, I certainly don't think there's a hurry to drink this wine up. It's a 5-year-old wine. I would imagine it would very happily continue to age in bottle for another 5 or 6 years. I wouldn't think it was a wine for long aging. Its acidity really doesn't equip it for that. And you don't need to wait to drink it, because it has a richness, a ripeness, and it's beautiful and approachable now. So thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, the best answer is to sign up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have friends you think might be interested in watching the video, do please share it with them. It would be fantastic for us to get that recommendation from you. If you have any comments, please leave those in the comments box below. I'll leave a link in the notes for the wine to the Wine Searcher page for this vintage of this wine, so you can have a look at the critics' scores and comments yourself. You can have a look at pricing and availability of this wine in your market. You can see price history and quite a lot of other details surrounding the wine as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and do please try and make some time and come and join us for another tasting very soon, won't you? Thanks again. Bye for now.